So recently I started talking about the Marvel Cinematic Universe with a fellow user on Kanzenshu.com, and as we've gotten into those discussions and talked about stuff like Thor the Dark World, Iron Man 3, Captain America Civil War, we eventually got to the Avengers, and as I was talking to this guy about the Avengers, he was actually bringing up some stuff that looked kind of interesting for me, and one of the reasons why he actually liked the movie, because I made a comment that I found the Avengers to be one of the most relentlessly boring formulaic films, and that kind of spurred him into getting into kind of a discussion with me and to talk to me about the film. And some of the points he was making, seemed actually kind of interesting, to so much so that I actually wanted to go back to the film and reevaluate it. And ironically enough, this today is actually probably the 5-year anniversary of the release of The Avengers. And no matter what I say about the film after a very recent rewatch of it, The Avengers is one of the most important movies that's ever come out. It is single-handedly the reason why we've gotten this big, explosion of comic book movies, both good, great, bad, wasted potential, okay ones. It's the reason why Marvel has been able to launch and create many other better films than The Avengers, significantly better ones, in the form of Iron Man 3, Winter Soldier, Guardians of the Galaxy, even Doctor Strange to a point. And, it's allowed them to create, the Netflix little sub-universe where we have lots of good shit being made there as well. And it has been a film that has, rewarded a lot of us by letting this good material get created. And so, despite what I'm about to say about the Avengers, I want to state that in spite of all the issues I have with the film and my inability to understand how people can love it as vehemently as they do and how they can tout it as one of the best comic book films of all time and probably even one of the best movies of all time, sentiments that I absolutely do not share in any way, shape, or form, I will say this, that The Avengers is always going to have at least kind of a special place in my heart for just letting the likes of Winter Soldier and Iron Man 3 get made, because if this movie wasn't successful, those two films probably wouldn't have been able to come out in the way they did. And I feel like even if you're someone who doesn't like the film or doesn't particularly care for it the way I do, you should at least find a place in your heart to appreciate it for that alone. So on to an actual kind of review of The Avengers. So the basic premise of The Avengers is that Captain America has recently been brought out of the ice, and the Tesseract was found along with him, and Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. have been experimenting with the Tesseract. This gets the attention of Thanos, Loki, and the Chitauri, and Loki is sent to Earth to basically conquer it for himself, but also probably to bring back the Tesseract and his spear to Thanos because they're both Infinity Stones, and then Nick Fury has to, assemble the Avengers to fight him. And as I was watching this film, I was always trying to keep in mind the things that this user was telling me, about Loki's character, about the plot, about, the sense of camaraderie and the things, Captain Logan has said, and even the gelatinous monstrosity that is Movie Bob Chipman, a guy whose opinion I value very, very little. Like, there were even things that he managed to say about this film that kind of stuck with me. And as I was watching it, I was trying to see what they were talking about. And part of me was even hoping that I was going to have an Iron Man 3-esque revelation where the movie was just going to click with me and that I was going to find something to latch onto, at least something that was going to stick out to me and keep me invested. And I did not find that. This was definitely not like a revelatory experience the way rewatching Iron Man 3 was, where the whole movie just suddenly clicked for me. This movie isn't as bad and as boring as I remember it to be. In a world where Rogue fucking One exists, I actually want to apologize to the Avengers, because after Rogue One, I have seen what an actual boring as shit movie is from beginning to end. And the Avengers isn't boring really until the last act, where the whatever the fuck action set piece starts and goes on for like 35 minutes. Before then, the film is fine. It's average. There are no bad performances in the film. There actually are, bits of, really good dialogue here and there, good humor. Like the things that I could most say compelled me to keep watching it were Tom Hiddleston's Loki and Mark Ruffalo's Hulk. Those are probably the only two things in the entire film that I would categorize as being legitimately fantastic. These guys are asked to show and convey a whole bunch of emotions, emotional ranges, and I feel like Ruffalo and Hiddleston both do that. I feel like these are the only two guys who are given any actual material to work with. And because they have material to work with and their actors are actually interested in giving really good, really convincing performances, these guys, help elevate the movie whenever they're on screen. They're actually so good in this movie that I would actually say that they help elevate other lesser actors into actually giving a shit or to actually act for once. For example, when Mark Ruffalo is interacting with Robert Downey Jr., Robert Downey Jr. does not give a fuck about this movie. He does not give a performance. He is full on, I know I'm Robert Downey Jr., I know you all unconditionally love me, therefore I will not give a proper performance, and that's pretty much him in this entire movie. There is absolutely nothing Tony Stark about him. He is just Robert Downey Jr. from beginning to end. However, in the scenes where he's interacting with Mark Ruffalo, he is actually trying to act at least a little bit. Scarlett Johansson, probably one of the weakest actors in the MCU, an actress who just plays, the generic strong female character where she can kick a lot of ass, but she has the personality of a brick wall. That's her in this movie, but there are scenes where she's with Mark Ruffalo, and she actually gives pretty convincing performances. For example, the scene where they're in, the shack in the middle of nowhere, and he slams on the desk, and she just freaks out and whips the gun at him, and the look on her face as she's just staring him down, the look on the face as he's trying to calm her down was really, really damn good, and it was legitimately a nice little tense scene where Scarlett Johansson was actually able to act for once. So that was pretty cool. Chris Hemsworth, once again, when he's with Tom Hiddleston, he's actually able to do something, very little, but something with the Thor character. So that was pretty cool. But besides Hiddleston and Ruffalo, there's really nothing exceptional about this movie. The script is fairly bare bones, and the script actually has some Age of Ultron level problem. Not as bad as Age of Ultron, but there are things in this film that do kind of set a precedent for Age of Ultron that I do want to get into in the way the plot fights against the storyline, and I'm going to get to that later on. But, like I said, a lot of these actors aren't really given anything to do. I feel like Joss Whedon's humor and snark really gets in the way of some action set pieces and scenes that could potentially be tense. Like the scene where the jet is firing on Hulk. That's supposed to be like a scene where it's like really scary and it's really intimidating, and it's just this guy helplessly floating around in a big hunk of crumbling metal as the Hulk is probably gonna fucking kill him. And then you have, snark at the beginning of that scene, and then you have like a funny little physical gag at the end of it. And I'm just like, really, Joss, you couldn't let it go. And there are other instances of like that where the movie is trying to be funny and snarky in scenes that are really inappropriate. Like after Coulson is stabbed by Loki, it's supposed to be like this really dramatic scene where Coulson is like defying Loki with his dying breath, and he even manages to shoot him, and then it ends with a stupid snarky little gag, and I just want to bash Joss Whedon's skull in for not being able to help himself, to control himself. And those are just a couple of instances that really pop out of my head. But I don't get what the fuck this movie does that is so exceptional. I don't get what this movie does than any other comic book film before or after it, which are significantly better. It's not better written than, say, X2, First Class, Batman Begins, or The Dark Knight. It's certainly not better written than Iron Man 3, Winter Soldier, Guardians of the Galaxy, Days of Future Past, BVS. Yes, I'm gonna say it. It's not better written than even Doctor fucking Strange, I would say. Even Civil War, I think, is better written than this, and I really dislike Civil War. It's not more entertaining than a lot of the films I just listed. It's not better acted than any of them, certainly. Like Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen in the first X-Men movie, they fucking outact everybody in the MCU by a massive margin, never mind just the Avengers. It's not the best team movie. Certainly before it we had X2 and First Class, and after it you got Days of Future Past, you got Guardians of the Galaxy. You've got Age of Ultron as well, which is, once again, like an example of a significantly better acted, better directed, better shot, better written film, a much more interesting film at that. And I just don't get it. There is nothing exceptional about this movie. It's fine. The action sequences are serviceable. Most of the performances are serviceable, with a couple of exceptions in the really good category. The music is really forgettable. The aesthetics of the movie are really, really bland, boring Marvel, where all the reds are brown and all the skins are gray, and basically everything looks fucking gray as hell. There's just nothing in this movie, with a couple of things that Joss Whedon is maybe trying to do with it story wise, and that's kind of where I want to transition into the Age of Ultron precedent setting, because Age of Ultron, as Confused Matthew said in his review, is a movie that's 3/4 plot and only 1/4 story. And a plot is what happens in the film. It's Joker robs a bank, Batman finds out about it, and then Batman, hunts the Joker. Joker kills Rachel, blows up Harvey, then he blows up the hospital, and then Joker fights Batman, and then Batman, kills Harvey, and then he becomes a wanted fugitive. Like, that's the plot of The Dark Knight. It's just a series of events that need to happen for there to be a storyline. But the actual story is, the themes, the context, the subtext. It's the stuff about how if you stay a hero past the point where you need to be, you're just going to become a villain, either actually or at least in the eyes of the public. That's like one of the big themes of The Dark Knight, and that's part of the storyline that's not in the plot. Joker is saying that he's fighting for the soul of Gotham is part of the storyline. That's something that's meant to make his defeat against Batman and his victory over Harvey Dent thematically powerful and emotionally powerful. So that's the storyline. And Age of Ultron is a movie where it doesn't have the time or even the ability to reconcile the blockbuster formula that it has to adhere to with the story it wants to tell. Because Age of Ultron is a movie that's about, existentialism. It's about, Nietzschean concepts. It's about, do we need superheroes? Are the Avengers just holding humanity back? And there is a lot of really strong thematic stuff in that film, and it's, strong character stuff, but the movie is so buried and so pressed for time. It needs to constantly move along to hit all the various beats of the plot that the actual storyline, kind of comes in and out of the film. So you have like this little bit where there's some story happening on a character level or on a thematic level, and then we gotta move on to, the big action set pieces, or we gotta move on to this new location, to set up some new plot point or to progress the plot along. And that's kind of what the big problem of Age of Ultron is, that it doesn't have the time, to tell the true story it wants to tell. The story is really compressed between the big fucking bricks that comprise the plot. And there is some precedent set for that in the Avengers, where you constantly have characters talking about war. You constantly have characters comparing Loki's arrival to a big calamity, a big disastrous war that's on par with World War II, that's meant to be like this big dramatic paradigm shift in the storyline. And it's not so overt the way Age of Ultron's is, to where you're like, I feel like you're trying to do something here, but it feels like something keeps getting in the way of you actually conveying what you're trying to say. Avengers is, even story-wise, a fairly simple film, which is why I'm not surprised that a lot of people didn't pick this up. But there are quite a few instances where characters are trying to take the situation like really seriously. Like, this is World War III. This is, going to be a massive shift in, human civilization. And there are scenes where they're playing this really, really straight. And then you have a lot of blockbuster MCU formula stuff getting in the way, where the Battle of New York is sometimes this dramatic loss of life, this horrible, draining, emotionally destroying catastrophe where innocent people's lives are being wrecked. And then another second, it's, oh my fucking god, Thor and Hulk are on the screen together, and they're fighting stuff, and they're blowing more shit up than the aliens are, and look how fucking cool it is, you guys, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. And there are quite a few moments in the film where the movie is actually trying to be about something, maybe, sort of, but then it's buried under, oh my fucking god, look how cool this is, look, it's fan service, look, it's the fucking Helicarrier, how fucking cool is that? And that undermines whatever thing Whedon is trying to say about it. It's either the humor or the MCU tropes constantly getting in the way of whatever Whedon is trying to do. And actually, I kind of feel like a lot of the things that people say about BVS, how BVS just forgets what it's trying to talk about in the favor of big action sequence. I actually feel like Avengers kind of does that more, because it's trying to directly compare Loki's invasion to a big full-scale war, and it's going to be like this dramatic thing. It's going to alter the way human life is going to be on the planet forever, but it spends so much time going around saying, look how fucking cool this is. Look, it's the Avengers. You're seeing the Avengers on the big screen. Look, oh man, look how badass Captain America is. And then one second you got people, being murdered. But then the other second it's, oh my fucking god, look how cool Captain America is. He's fighting the Chitauri in live action. Buy our movies. And that's kind of where I think that the Avengers actually sets a precedent for what eventually ended up in Age of Ultron, because the plot of the Avengers is a lot simpler and has a lot less to say. I'm not surprised a lot of people didn't notice this, but when I watch this movie, it's actually like seeing the future problems of Age of Ultron being birthed right in front of me and only really coming into their own when Age of Ultron itself proper comes out, because Age of Ultron has a far more complex storyline. It has, actual themes and ideas that it wants to tackle within the film, but it's really shortchanged by a lack of time, by studio interference, and the fact that it has to conform to the Marvel formula and it can't reconcile what it wants to talk about with the blockbuster trappings of the film it is. And there are quite a few elements of that are actually very noticeable in the Avengers. So if you're someone who actually wants to analyze this movie to find out where Age of Ultron's problems stem from, or where Age of Ultron went wrong, quote unquote, I feel like this movie is actually a really good place to see where those problems are actually kind of foreshadowed in the future. But like I already said, there's nothing exceptional about this movie. There's barely anything to talk about it. It's not particularly well filmed. It looks like a TV movie. Most of the performances aren't anything special. And I wouldn't even say it's a particularly super fun time. There are considerably better movies that are a lot more fun than this. There are considerably worse movies that are more fun than this. Like, fuck's sake, Iron Man 2 is about on par with this, but I have considerably more fun and am more invested in everything that's happening in Iron Man 2 than I am in anything that's happening in the Avengers. And I don't see how so many people who have seen considerably better movies before the Avengers and after the Avengers can really look me in the eye and tell me this is one of the greatest comic book movies of all time. No, it's one of the most significant comic book movies of all time, but there's a difference. A story can be significant, but it doesn't have to be amazing to be significant. I know that's a weird thing to say, but it doesn't have to be a prerequisite. It really does feel like people thought that the Avengers was going to be a piece of shit, and then when it ended up being okay, a lot of people were so amazed by the fact that it turned out okay that they immediately propped the movie up as being several levels above what it actually is, and that's an okay movie. It's kind of fun for the first two acts. There are a couple of really good performances in it. There's some good dialogue, good banter here and there, but it's just so thoroughly unremarkable in comparison to so many films that have come after it and a lot of films that came before it, that I just can't help but feel confused by the fact that so many people love it. And it's not even a situation where you have the average casual viewer saying, this is the best one ever, and then they haven't seen a lot of other ones. But no, I see a lot of people who have watched X2 and First Class and Batman Begins and Dark Knight and Winter Soldier, Iron Man 3, and all those other movies that a lot of people really love and are considerably better than anything in the Avengers. And then they still say the Avengers is still better than them, and I don't see it. I really, really don't. It's not even the most enjoyable Marvel movie, not by a long shot. I'd say I had barely any more fun with this than I did Thor: The Dark World, and that's kind of a backhanded, compliment to say to it. So yeah, the Avengers. I do appreciate it as a product that allowed other far superior products to come out of it down the line. But its reputation is, quality-wise anyway, thoroughly undeserved. There are so many better comic book films before and after it, so many better teen movies, so many better origin flicks, just so many better movies in the genre itself that I will probably never, ever be able to understand what the fuck is it about this film besides the fact that it wasn't a total unwatchable piece of shit that makes people love it so vehemently. So what is your stance on the Avengers 5 years after its release? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Are you equally perplexed by its massive love and admiration as I am? Are you someone who gets it? Are you one of those people who's going to try and convince me that I don't get it? Please comment, like down below in the comments, and I'll hopefully see you next time. Bye.